All right, get ready for this, because this deep dive, it takes us like straight into this crazy world of Venice. You send over some really fascinating stuff about this city, and honestly, the fact that Venice even exists, it kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, it's one of those places, isn't it?
We're talking about a city built, like literally built on mud, on a lagoon.
It's like they looked at a swamp and were like, hey, I know, let's build a city here.
It's wild, right? But to really get it, you got to kind of, go back in time, way back to like the 5th, 6th centuries. Picture this: Huns tearing across Europe, chaos everywhere. You've got like the Slavs, the Lombards, all these different groups fighting for power. People needed somewhere safe, like really needed it.
So where do you go? And that's where the Venetian lagoon comes in. Tough environment, definitely. But that's kind of the point. It was like this unexpected fortress gave them the protection they desperately needed.
It's like they used the water as their wall, their defense.
Hmm?
Still, building on a lagoon, I can't wrap my head around it. Who wakes up and decides that building on mud is a good idea?
Right. You'd think it'd be a recipe for disaster, but you gotta hand it to them. Those early Venetians were like masters of resourcefulness. They actually looked to, believe it or not, salt producers for inspiration. They used techniques these salt guys used to, get this, dry out the land.
Wait, hold up. So they used the lagoon itself to create more land to build on. That's some next-level ingenuity right there. I need details. How'd they pull that off?
So picture this. They channeled seawater into these shallow pools right there in the lagoon. Sun beats down, water evaporates. What's left? Salt. And you know the kicker? Drier land. This is how they started building those first groundbreaking, well, more like water-breaking artificial islands.
Artificial islands? Okay, hold on. We can't just gloss over the artificial island thing. This is way before, concrete and cranes and all that. How do you even begin to build an island on mud, let alone a whole city?
All right, so imagine this, right? Picture tens of thousands, huge numbers of wooden stakes. We're not talking about little twigs here. These are massive tree trunks driven deep, deep into that lagoon mud. That's your base. And then on top of that, they piled dirt, rubble, anything they can get their hands on to create some kind of solid ground.
It's like a giant prehistoric version of those little houses you build out of toothpicks and marshmallows, but, a tad more ambitious.
Exactly. And for the final touch, the pièce de résistance, if you will, they used Istrian limestone. This stuff came all the way across the Adriatic Sea from what's now Croatia. This stone, this limestone, was their secret weapon. Super dense, waterproof. It was like it was made to be the foundation of a city on the water.
Let me get this straight. They basically built a city on stilts, on a lagoon that's constantly trying to, be a lagoon. Unbelievable. And we're not just talking about a little village here. We're talking Venice, a whole network of islands.
Exactly. And here's the thing. They didn't just do it once. They kept at it. Over centuries, they scaled this whole crazy process to an almost impossible scale. We're talking 124 islands, all connected by, get this, 400 kilometers of canals. That's like, I don't know, traveling from London to Paris by canal. Each brick, each stake, every single stone is a testament to how dedicated, how determined these people were. This wasn't just city planning. This was an epic saga of engineering.
It really is amazing how they figured out how to, actually build this city. They took this environment that seemed so against them and used it to their advantage. But now, I don't know. Now it kind of feels like that whole water thing, that relationship, it's gotten a little messy.
Yeah, you could say that. It's almost ironic. The very thing that made Venice possible is now, well, probably the biggest threat to its survival. And it's not just about, water levels rising because of climate change, although that's definitely part of it.
You're talking about those aqua alta things, right? Those high tides. I've heard they're legendary in Venice.
Exactly. Imagine just a city that's constantly bracing itself for a flood. These high tides, they're caused by all these different things coming together, the tides themselves, the wind, the very shape of the lagoon, and they're happening more and more often these days. St. Mark's Square? That iconic plaza? Yeah, that gets flooded more than 130 times a year now.
Over 130 times a year?
Yeah.
Seriously. That's, almost every other day. I can't even imagine trying to live a normal life there. Forget running a business or whatever. Just going to the grocery store would be a gamble.
Yeah, it's definitely a way of life. But the thing is, the aqua alta, that's only one part of the problem. The real silent killer, the thing that's really insidious, is the salt.
Salt? Wait, like table salt? From the seawater?
One and the same. Every time that salt water floods the city, it seeps into everything. The bricks, the mortar, the very foundations of the buildings. The water eventually recedes, goes back to the lagoon, but the salt, That stuff lingers. It gets absorbed into the porous bricks. And here's the thing. Salt crystallizes, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's good.
And those salt crystals, as they grow, they put pressure on the brick from the inside out. It's like this slow, steady erosion that weakens the city little by little with every high tide.
That's crazy. So it's like this invisible enemy just slowly eating away at the city.
Pretty much. And it affects everything. Homes, bridges, those incredible basilicas are all vulnerable. Even St. Mark's Basilica, this like symbol of Venice for centuries, even that's feeling the effects of this constant salt attack. It's like Venice is being pulled in both directions at once, you know? Battered by the water, eaten away by the salt. It's a tough spot to be in.
It really is. It's like this constant battle between the city and the water, and the salt's just there, waiting to take advantage. But it's not just nature that's putting pressure on the city, is it? What about all the tourists? They've got to have some kind of impact, right? It's not like Venice is some undiscovered gem. Millions of people visit every year.
You're right. You absolutely can't discount the impact of tourism. You're talking about more than 27 million visitors every year. That's like, I don't know, the entire population of Australia all crammed into this one fragile city. And yeah, that takes a toll.
I've seen photos of those massive cruise ships, those like floating cities, dwarfing the canals. They look so out of place there, like they don't belong.
And it's not just a visual thing. Those big ships, even the smaller boats, they all contribute to what's called moto ondoso. That basically translates to a wave motion. Every time a boat goes by, especially those big cruise ships, they create these waves, these wakes that slam against the foundations of the buildings, the canals, everything. And that constant pounding, it's incredibly damaging. You know those bricks we talked about? The ones already being weakened by the salt? Yeah, those waves are not helping.
It's like they're being hit from all sides. The high tides, the salt, and now the waves from all the boats. So it's like Venice is caught in this triangle of trouble, rising sea levels, that constant salt erosion. And then you've got millions of tourists kind of, loving the city to death. Not exactly a recipe for a long life, especially for a city, what is it, 1,500 years old?
Yeah.
But I have to believe that the Venetians, they've got a plan, right?
Oh, yeah, giving up. That's not really in their DNA. They've been dealing with these challenges for centuries, always adapting, innovating.
So what's like the current strategy? How are they fighting back?
One of their biggest weapons, so to speak, is this project called Maillot.
Mosaics. Okay, got to be honest. I'm drawing a blank here. What is that?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, right? It stands for Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico. Basically, it's the system of massive hollow flood barriers designed to, stop those high tides from flooding the lagoon.
Okay, so like giant gates that rise up to keep the water out.
Exactly. Imagine these massive high-tech walls just chilling underwater when they're not needed. Then when the tide starts getting too high, boom, they inject these things with compressed air. They inflate like giant balloons and form this temporary dam against the waves.
It sounds almost too wild to work.
Yeah.
And does it? Is it working?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing feat of engineering, and it has held back some high tides. But the project has had a lot of, hiccups. It's been super expensive, for one thing, way over budget. And then there's the whole ecological impact, which, let's be real, is always a concern with these kinds of mega projects.
So Moe's might be buying them some time, but it's not exactly a perfect solution.
It's a bit of a gamble, to be honest. It's hard to say what the long-term effects will be, but messing with nature is always, it always comes with risks.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So are there other options on the table? Maybe something a little more, in tune with nature, a little less, intrusive?
There are, actually. And it's kind of cool because it involves going back to their roots, looking at the techniques those early Venetians used, the ones we talked about earlier.
You mean like those salt drying techniques?
Yeah.
You're kidding, right? How did that help with rising sea levels?
Well, remember how those salt marshes, they kind of created these natural barriers in the lagoon? Scientists are realizing that those sandbars, those natural defenses, they're actually crucial. So they're working on ways to basically rebuild them.
So they're like reconstructing the lagoon's immune system.
Exactly. Those sandbanks, they act like natural breakwaters, absorbing the energy from the waves before they even get close to the city. But over time, as Venice grew, a lot of those sandbanks, they were dredged up, eroded away, or just plain disappeared. And guess what happened? The city became way more vulnerable.
It's like they accidentally, disarmed their own natural defenses.
In a way, yeah. But now they're trying to reverse the damage. They're dredging sand from deeper in the lagoon and using that to rebuild those sandbanks to make them bigger and stronger.
So instead of just trying to hold the water back, they're giving the lagoon the tools to protect itself and the city.
Exactly. It's about working with nature, not just trying to control it.
It's like that saying, right? The best way over it is through it. Maybe the solution for Venice isn't about fighting the water, but learning to, I don't know, dance with it.
Maybe. It's a story that's still being written, you know? But one thing's for sure. The Venetians, they're not giving up. They built a city on water against all odds. They're resourceful, they're resilient, and they're deeply connected to their environment. I mean, it's their home. They're going to do everything they can to keep it afloat.
It's been a real eye-opener, this deep dive. Venice is, well, there's no place like it on Earth. This incredible blend of history, architecture, culture, all interwoven with this powerful and kind of unpredictable lagoon. It really makes you think about our relationship with nature, doesn't it? How we can't just ignore the environment, the way it works, what it needs. We have to learn to live with it, work with it, because in the end, it's going to do what it wants, right? So if the early Venetians found a way to build a city on water, who's to say what the future holds? Maybe they'll find a way to not just survive, but to thrive. That's it for this deep dive into the world of Venice. We'll catch you on the next one.